Welcome to The Lens with me, Sarah Travers. The Lens is a business in the community podcast in partnership with One Young World. I'm thrilled to introduce our guests today. They are Paul Lewis, Firmwide Managing Partner at Linklaters, one of the world's leading law firms, and Yemisi Isidi, co-founder, strategy and finance lead for Triift Africa, an organisation making it easier for underserved communities and businesses to access the services they need to succeed. Now, in this episode, we'll be discussing how businesses can get into the hearts of communities to make an impact and become part of the fabric in places right across the UK as positive corporate citizens that play their part in strengthening society at all levels. So to find out more, let's get into the conversation. Paul, Yemisi, you're very welcome to The Lens. So as usual, we always start with finding out a little bit more about the human beings that we're talking to. So, Paul, I'd love to start with you today. If you could please tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you've come to be in your role at Linklaters.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sarah. So I will do the potted history. So I am from a very small village in South Wales. So I come from a village outside Swansea, went to the local comprehensive school, sort of very different world than the world I live in now in the city in London, etc. Managed to get myself to Oxford University, went from Oxford to Linklaters and have been a Linklaters lifer all the way through. So from sort of whatever it was, mid to late 90s. On the legal side, I focused on finance law, so all sorts of different types of raising finance, etc., etc. And the more complicated, the more mathsy, the better. I've taken on various different management roles at Linklaters over the years, and for the last 3.5, coming to 4 years, I have been the Firmwide Managing Partner at Linklaters, which essentially means that I am the day-to-day manager of the firm, which is 2.1 billion revenue. We're in 20 geographies. We have 30 offices, etc., etc. We're a big corporate and commercial law firm. So that is me in terms of the business. Outside of the business, sort of married with 2 children and 2 fantastic cavapoos. I should say that both about my wife and the children as well, but also fantastic cavapoos. And what do I like doing? I read a huge amount, all and everything, and I like running. So there you go. That's me in hopefully about 60 seconds.
Action-packed, Paul, absolutely. And we'll probably come back to you and talk to you a little bit more, well, maybe about the doggies, but about the books that you're reading, and you might share some of those. We've built up quite a little book club here on The Lens. And right now, Paul, what's a day in the life like for you?
So the old adage of if you spend your day in meetings, that a meeting is wasted time, etc. So somewhat worryingly, if that's true, then I'm wasting my entire existence, because my day is meeting, right? So all the sort of standard budgeting and compensation and strategy and where we're going and what we're doing and so on. So the day-to-day life of essentially a CEO, and with then some more interesting and fun things that we'll get onto and talk about sort of things I do on the responsible business side. A whole range.
Well, you're smiling, so you're obviously doing them right. That's how you conduct those meetings, isn't it? Okay, we'll come back to you in a while to get into the heart of what we're talking about today. But Yemisi, it's lovely to talk to you today. And you're joining us from Nigeria.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for having me.
So would you be able to give us a little bit of background into who you are and a bit about your journey to setting up Triift Africa?
Okay, so I studied accounting for management at Aston University in the UK. Part of my curriculum, or part of the school's curriculum, was getting a year off to work or to study abroad. And so I chose the work option, where I got to work with a community center in Smethwick, which is like on the outskirts of Birmingham. So I felt like that was a pivotal moment for me, because I really enjoyed the work that I did in that time. I had a lot of opportunities to make impact in the local community that I was working with, most of which was around helping them get basic skills to improve their quality of life. So digital skills, how to speak English, helping them transition into work. And I knew that whatever I ended up doing after graduation had to be tied with community and social impact. And so when I moved back to Nigeria in 2017, one of the problems that really stood out to me was the number of nano and micro businesses, most of which were owned by women, and how they did not seem to be able to get funding. And that lack of credit significantly limited their ability to grow. And so that is how I started Triift Africa. So Triift Africa essentially provides funding as collateral-free microloans. We also work with a number of organizations who provide grants, funding, capacity building, compliance services to nano and micro businesses, helping them launch their ideas and succeed. So that is a bulk of my work, what we do at Triift Africa. But even beyond the work with Triift Africa, I do a lot of work as well with early stage startups across Africa, helping them become investment ready, helping them launch their ideas, enter new markets, and also with young people, helping them get decent jobs by getting the right digital skills, understanding how to apply for jobs, connecting them with opportunities, and all of that. But it all started with my work at the SMEDIC Community Center in Birmingham.
Isn't that amazing? And it's really commendable as well that you have that purpose behind everything you do. How difficult was it to get started out? And when you were coming to people saying, I've got this great idea, what happened whenever you approached people first off? Did they think, oh yeah, fantastic, but where's the money coming from?
Yeah, so we have that. Where is the money coming from? I think I entered into it with a lot of passion and enthusiasm. So I probably didn't think too much about the negatives or the downsides of it until we got neck deep into it. So when I decided to launch, I'm very grateful for my family and friends. I was able to raise some funding, which we used to run like a pilot phase. It was during that pilot phase that I realized that beyond funding, a lot of businesses just are unable to succeed because they do not have the right business knowledge and access to markets. So we've seen how something as small as teaching a business how to use WhatsApp can significantly improve their revenue by up to 200%. And so we started, beyond just providing funding, investing a lot into capacity building, getting into a lot of partnerships that enabled us provide training, putting these businesses in cluster communities so that a lot of peer-to-peer learning can take place as well. So it was really hard because I was just so passionate and so excited about the impact that my work could make. But as you got into it, then there is the regulatory part of it, of building like a financial institution in Nigeria. You realize, okay, beyond passion, when you're hiring a team, you have to manage the team and align them with your vision and getting stakeholders on board, identifying the right partners to work with. And then the part of like dealing with non-performing loans or the economic instability in this part of the world and how that significantly affects businesses and their ability to use and return the money. So you begin to think more business and more sustainability as it grows very quickly. But yeah, it's been great despite the challenges.
Well, you're smiling too, Yemisi, so it must be working. And, everything that you've shared with us just in that brief introduction just ties into what we're talking about today, how businesses really reach into the hearts of the communities and reach those hard to reach people as well. So, Paul, I'd love to pick up with you on the theme of today's topic. I'm sure, working in legal services perhaps conjures up different things for our listeners, depending on what sector they're in. But in terms of Linklaters, one of the big four in the magic circle of law firms, how does Linklaters define its role in the broader community, both in the UK and further afield?
So, and I think you touched on it there, just to give a bit of context. We're not criminal lawyers. We're not the people who are sort of doing family law, et cetera, et cetera. We are sort of big commercial, corporate sort of disputes type work. So big public mergers and acquisitions, big financing for big corporates and funds, et cetera, disputes that go wrong between companies and so on. So that's the type of law that we practice. So we're not necessarily the type of lawyers that people would naturally think of. We go back to we're in 20 jurisdictions, 6,000 people, 2.1 billion revenue. We're big, and we're a very successful law firm. And for us, we've been really active in social impact work everywhere we operate. So both in the UK and in the other 19 jurisdictions that we're in. And we've done that for a huge amount of time. We have a dedicated team that runs our program, and we have a lot of others who get involved in that. And sort of the core belief in that is that we want to give something back and support underserved and underrepresented communities wherever we're based. So how do we do that? We do that through charitable initiatives, volunteering, and strategic partnerships. And so if I look at what we do, and the benefit of the size and the breadth is, so 47% of our people last year actively participated in some form of volunteering activities. And the total of that was 75,000 hours to different communities around the world. We donated around 24 million sterling in cash and other sort of like donations. So, as an organization, we are passionate about it, and we do a huge amount for it. For a personal level, actually, it's been, when people ask me, what's the most interesting part of your job or fun bit, etc., what will you reflect on? This has been probably one of, if not the most fulfilling aspects of my role. So it's something really close to my heart. It's been a really big focus for me since I became managing partner. As you know, BITC is something I passionately believe in, the work you do. I'm an ambassador for the Seeing is Believing program. I think we're going to talk separately about that at a different point in time. I'm on the Newport Pride of Place board with yourselves. I'm also a trustee of another charity called the Social Mobility Business Partnership. And all of those things I just find incredibly sort of personally rewarding, but that's sort of quite a selfish way of looking at it. But I think they are really valuable ways of being able to give back into community.
Are there any particular engagements that you're particularly proud of, either with Linklaters or indeed with the Seeing is Believing?
Yeah, so let's talk about Seeing is Believing. So Newport is the one that I have personally been focused on a huge amount as a result. So as a firm, as we try and follow what is very similar to BITC, which is a place-based approach. So one of our places is Newport, and we put a huge amount of effort in there. So through that, we've been able to support this wonderful organisation that combats homelessness and addiction. Which are two particularly prevalent issues in the particular area. So the area we focus on is an area of Newport called Hill, which is sort of a somewhat deprived area. And we also support the two fantastic charities that work at that sort of hyper-local level to provide support to the community. So what have we done? Financial contributions, that's sort of the easiest thing for us to do. So one, funding renovation of a community centre for the Newport Yemisi Community Association. When we first went there, it was a building site. And when we go back to Newport, we have our meetings there. School trips. So later on today, actually, we've got a group of kids from one of the charities who are up here in London, and we're hosting a day for them about this is how the city works, this is what we do, and I'm going down to talk to them later on. So employment program pilots, pro bono legal advice for some of those charities we talked about. So our real estate team here are helping them with some development work they're doing, mentoring, so charity education leaders and so on, and then back to those career insight visits. So sort of very targeted things, somewhere we can bring, what's that old adage, you can bring time, talent, treasure. Treasure's really easy for us in the sense of, we devote a lot of money towards this type of work, but we've got talent, we've got really talented lawyers that can help on legal issues, and we can provide time. So we've done all three of those things, in particular in Newport.
And I suppose I would love to know, how do you choose who to help and who to support? Do you have certain criteria or pillars that you align to?
We do. And we've got a great team. So we have a sustainability and social impact team led by a fantastic individual called Matt Sparks. And Matt is the person who keeps us honest. So yes, we do globally have a defined set of principles of what we want to do and how it fits. And so a good example is Newport itself. So I was very passionate. BITC asked me to lead the trip there, went there, etc. And so my conversation with Matt was, Matt, I think this is a really good thing. Where does that fit? Does that fit within our principles? Hold me and make me honest. And actually go back to that sort of place-based approach. Actually, we looked at it and said, right, well, we do choose places. Now, often and historically, a lot of those were very London-based. Clearly, there's deprived areas in London, sort of quite close to the heart of where we operate. So Haringey is one we've really focused on. But we've also been focused within the UK of trying to make sure that we're looking at the whole country and that we're not purely London focused. So Newport was one where, BITC were vital in terms of sort of linking us into that. And we then focused on a number of other programs there as well. So, I won't claim that there's a sort of, a hugely scientific, let's look at all the areas of the UK, etc. Different opportunities come up. We apply them to the principles and say, do we think we can do something meaningful here? Do they align or not?
And you've shared, some of the stats and how you've measured the successful impact of what you're doing. But what does it mean to you to lead a firm that has community at its core?
I think the reality is, and we all know this, some of the things that our people find most fulfilling is working on these sorts of projects. And they take you out of, we spend our day doing these big commercial deals, etc. And they're phenomenally important and very challenging and very enthusing, etc. But they're somewhat divorced from sort of day-to-day actual reality. So I think that commitment to, using our skills either on the pro bono side, which is very much, in the law firm world tends to be when you are lawyers, you're providing free legal advice, or on just those community investment initiatives. Actually, I think that's hugely important to us. I think leading that organization, and the thing is, a leader can't take credit for it. We've done it before I became a leader. I've sort of fully thrown myself into it and very passionate about it. But it does make you very proud that people want to do that. And we also work with our clients. Our clients care passionately about it. So it provides you with a very good link in with your clients as well. So look, it's hugely important to us. It's what we are. And yes, we can write it down on words and pieces of paper, etc. But actually what it really comes down to is, when you see on the ground what difference you can make, it is important. And just to give one example, I took my exco, so these are the sort of the most senior leaders within the firm. I effectively took them all to Newport and I said, let's do a mirror of the BITC Seeing is Believing program where, as you know, BITC takes a bunch of business leaders to a place and shows them over a day that these are the things you can get involved in. These are the issues on the ground. So I did effectively a rerun of that with my exco. And again, my rationale was, this is what we do as a firm. You are the senior leaders of the firm. I want to put you in the actual sort of shoes of on the ground so you can see exactly what we do. Again, that was a really, I know in so many ways it was an enthusing day. It galvanized all my global ExCom leaders to go back to their jurisdiction and think about what are we doing and what can we do, etc. Sorry, Sarah, I'm now rambling, so I will stop there and have the discipline to keep going.
That's really where the magic happens. That's where the pride for working for a firm that allows you to do these things comes in, and it's a good place to work. Yemisi, you shared the work you're doing in the digital skills arena, but I wonder if you could give us examples of some of the initiatives that you've been involved with, especially maybe equipping our young people with those essential skills for the digital economy and the workplace. And maybe also you mentioned that you're helping people get jobs. So we love examples.
Yes. Okay. So, I'll start with helping people get jobs. So the thing is, there is the unemployment, so people unable to get jobs, and there is the unemployability. I firmly believe that the work that we're doing with businesses, both at Triift Africa and with other initiatives and part of supporting early stage startups, working with a number of incubator accelerator programs, my management consultancy, and so on, is helping people build profitable and sustainable business. And when they build a successful business, you can't run it alone. It forces you to bring in other people to buy into your vision, and that is how jobs are created. And then there is the employability aspects of it. So are the people who are coming in or who need these jobs, do they have the right skill and knowledge to provide the value that is needed for these businesses to succeed? And so one of the first things that I did when I moved back to Nigeria was have a lot of digital skills training for businesses, young people in North Central. A lot of it was very basic skills, fundamental skills, how to use social media, how to use the Google Workspace, key skills that are even more relevant now with the popularity of remote work. And like I mentioned earlier in the example I shared earlier, with digital skills, especially for business owners, it opens up access to markets. So someone with Instagram in a very remote area in Nigeria can set up a business and sell to you in the UK because she has Instagram and because she can use Instagram and you can find her, right? So it significantly opens up businesses to new markets and also helps them improve their operations. So now they are able to do things efficiently and more effectively. Also, for the youth that we are providing with these skills through our various initiatives and partnerships, they are now able to access jobs or beyond just accessing jobs, are more equipped to provide more values in the job. And even if we had done this initiative, we started this initiative years ago in 2018, so about 6 years now. We still have people reach out to us to talk about how, they first heard about Canva at an event that we organized, and now they are working with startups in the UK, in the US as graphic designers or as email marketers and so on. And it was just something that I probably did in the corner of a room that has down the line significantly influenced a person's life, opening them up to better livelihood.
How rewarding that must be for you, Yemisi. Paul, you were sharing with us the examples in Newport and Haringey and this idea of giving back to communities, which of course is a positive one. What benefits do you feel? What did you hear back from the communities themselves? That's what I'd really love to know. Were there standout moments that when somebody said something to you that made all the difference?
Yeah, I think the thing we tend to forget is, some things that can seem very small to us do have a really meaningful difference. So, I'll use one example of, talking to people on the ground. So Newport Yemeni Community Association, talking to some of their sort of 16 to 18-year-old there about what their careers are, what their options are, etc. Actually, for us, it's very easy to introduce them to a whole range of people who can give them a sort of wider, these are the things you might do if you want to leave Newport, if you want to stay within Newport, etc. This is how the world of business works, and so on. It's very easy contacts, suggestions we can do about job interviews, applications. We can give mentors. So one of those people, we gave a mentor from here who's been through very similar issues, and they sort of spend their time together. And for us, it's one of, we can do it very easily. But when you hear them from the other side, what that actually means in terms of just giving an utterly different perspective and potentially changing people's direction in terms of what they look to do in life, I think that is something deeply meaningful. And again, it's something you can look at and go, okay, that has actually made a difference, as opposed to sort of signing a particularly good M&A deal, etc. But I think the beauty of being on the ground in these place-based programs is you do see that impact that you have. You see the fact. So another one we did, as in one of the centres in Newport, what they do with so their clients effectively is they say, okay, we will give you food and some clothing, etc. But we want you to essentially to engage with us in something that sort of gives you transferable skills. So one of the things they were doing was developing their garden outside, which wasn't a garden to start with, it was a rough patch of land. And they needed some sort of cash in order to just have the material, be able to buy the materials and so on. And so for us, it was a relatively small amount. We could give that and so on. Then you go back 6 months later and you see this garden that 6 months ago was essentially a piece of scrap land, and now is a beautiful garden that's been built by the clients of the association, where they've learned skills by doing it. They've trained each other. The ones who are good at doing paving, the ones who are building walls, etc., to other skills and so on. And again, you sort of go and they're saying, thank you hugely. The money you gave us made us, able to do this. So you see that physical transformation in front of your eyes. And again, I think that's the anchor. We all donate to charities, but the reality of seeing exactly what that does, I think that's really meaningful.
How important is it for all businesses to consider social impact and giving back to perhaps the communities around them, or indeed further afield? Because not all would be as big or as large and have the capability and capacity as Linklaters. But I'm just wondering how you would sell this to other businesses.
Yeah, and so there's the easy one, which is the right thing to do. Okay, but that only takes you so far. I think from a business perspective, you look at it from a sort of just very, very direct business perspective. It is incredibly powerful, both for your own people and then for the clients that you serve. We're a professional services firm. We have a huge number of clients. So if I look at our people first, these are the things that when you sort of write down the, what makes you fulfilled in life type list, are you driven by money? Are you driven by challenge? Are you driven by other factors? Actually, I think, people are driven by the ability to give back, to see that they're doing something that makes a meaningful impact, contributing to make people's lives better, etc. So we run engagement surveys on a very regular basis. The people who are most heavily engaged in pro bono will have the highest satisfaction scores in our organization. They are most fulfilled in terms of what they're doing because they've got a great balance of things that they came to a firm like Linklaters for on the pure sort of Linklaters business law advice type perspective, and also then getting to engage in these other programs. So I think for all businesses out there, it is something that in every single way, when you survey what people want from an employer, etc., they want their employers to be actively contributing in this space and for people to have an opportunity to get involved. So from a business perspective, number one, I think that's an absolutely key factor. And then from a business perspective, number two, I think it's our clients who embrace that, and many of them will embrace that. In fact, almost all of them will embrace that. They also want to see the firms that they use, that they give business to, embracing that too. So I think it's an excellent thing in terms of building those client relationships. And we've gone as far as we will run joint programs with our clients where our people can do this together. And you get to engage with each other in a non-transactional business context when you're doing something that is bigger than all of us. And again, that forms bonds and relationships in a completely different way. So I think if you move beyond that, it is just the right thing to do level, and you get into that sort of business CEO type calculus, I think it's phenomenally powerful for both our people and our customers.
I think so. And I think just, having those values at the core of everything that you do, it just strengthens everything that you do. And whenever you hear the likes of Yemisi talking about literally just starting up, wanting to do this herself, I'm even thinking back to those, when you're choosing your subjects at school and you talked about your social impact team. Of course, back in my day, I'd never heard of anything like this, but it sounds like a fabulous career to go into.
Yeah, I mean, I come away from any of the events I go to thoroughly energized, and I get quite envious sometimes of Matt and the team that they get to be doing that each day, as do any number of people at BITC, etc. But then let's face it, there's the other side of that, right? Which is that you see the hardships that you're trying to counter, and you see the frustrations of we've been doing this, and it feels like you're going around the same hamster wheel of are you making a real difference? Are you making a real change? And I think that's one of my takeaways from this, which is. And it really came through in Newport, and I've been on at least one of the other Seeing is Believing programs for BITC. But in Newport, we had an event the night before we went out for the first visit, and we had a load of local community associations, local charity leaders, council, various politicians, etc. The message we got really clearly was it was one of wariness. It was we've been here before. We've been here before where a group of well-meaning but fundamentally naive business leaders descend upon us. They want great photos with the people on the ground, and then they sort of, express the best intentions of the day, and they vanish off and they don't help us, and nothing changes. And that really hit home. And when we were talking amongst all the sort of companies there in Newport, that for me was the single overriding piece of we will have failed if we allow that to happen to ourselves, i.e. this cannot be a fire and forget. We're there for one day. We sort of feel the human empathy and emotion and go away with best intentions, and nothing happens. So I think that wariness that I think was utterly justified in terms of, you do need to see a change in as to what you want to see and what you do make an impact.
Absolutely, hugely important. Yemisi, I'm just wondering, given what you've heard Paul talking about at the large global Linklaters, really what you do, you share the same values. You want to make a difference. You want to share time, talent, and treasure. But how do you persuade others to help you on your journey with the organizations, the companies, the small micro businesses that you help so well?
Okay. Oh, that's a good question. So one of the things that I've learned to do is to always look for that common ground. So a lot of times it is easy to assume that because it revolves around social impact, community engagement, not a lot of people may want to be involved in it because there is almost nothing in it for them. But that is not always true. I found that a lot of people are willing to help or be involved in some way if you're able to help them understand the importance or the benefits of the work that is being done and what a common ground looks like. So if, for instance, a business wants more people to patronize their product or their service, it ties into how many people have disposable income most times, right? And one way to enable more people have disposable incomes is to create decent jobs, ensure that they have a decent livelihood. And one way to do that is to ensure that people are building businesses that are thriving, and just helping them see that connection between the work that we're doing, even if it's a social enterprise revolving around social impacts, community engagement, and their own business objectives as well. So always finding that middle ground and starting the conversation from that place, helping people see the value in it for them and the holistic picture of what we're doing significantly helps. So helping people buy into the vision that you're creating by finding that common ground.
I'd love at this point to see if you have any questions for each other. Paul, would you like to ask anything of Yemisi?
Yeah, so I mean, it's fascinating to see what you're doing. I suppose what was the hardest thing in terms of all of this? What was the thing that you struggled the most with in terms of needing help, assistance, etc.?
Okay, so I'll be very honest and say that when I first started, I'm a very passionate person and I'm very big on impact. And so I think that if I had better mentorship, or if I could go back and do some things better, I would have thought about sustainability in line with impact. So for a number of things that we were doing, I am a numbers person now. A lot of my work revolves around helping businesses understand their numbers, but I wasn't paying attention to the numbers in terms of how we are impacting people's lives, but how are we generating revenue from this or profit such that we are able to even hire better staff and we're able to train our existing staff and continue doing this for longer. I was just very excited about the thousands of people that we're able to support with our limited resources and the impact that we're seeing in terms of access to jobs, building successful businesses. Perhaps if I had thought about sustainability and the profit side earlier, and how to balance both, a lot of things would have been more sustainable. And I mean, now I'm more knowledgeable. I'm able to balance both ends. And when I struggle to, I have someone on my team who is able to just help us match the value with the profits. But that was something that I wish that I had paid attention to when I first started.
See, that's fascinating. So I think one of the things we did go back to sort of the time and talent piece is that in this very similar situation with one of the charities we work with, one of our sort of senior business managers, so effectively accountant who'd spent 20, 30 years with us running one of our businesses and doing all the sort of this is what you do in terms of profit, etc. And he's just sort of spent a lot of time with the charity on, okay, what's your business plan and how are you going to make money and how are you going to sustain this and so on, and things that for him seem utterly basic because that's what he spent his entire life doing. That's not necessarily the skill set that a number of people like you are phenomenal in terms of that energy, enthusiasm, getting things off the ground, etc. But it's not, you haven't had that 30 years worth of business experience. So that sort of ability to have some people who can just sit there and ask and just say, you should think about this, you should potentially think about this, I can build you a business plan like this. That's really interesting in terms of matching the need with what organizations like ours can provide.
Yemisi, would you like to either come in on that or indeed ask Paul a question?
I think I would want to know what would you say is has been the most significant moment in your career or with building your business so far? Like something that really, really stands out and maybe was a pivotal moment for you.
That's a really good question. I think so I would distinguish, there's the day-to-day. So is your firm doing well? Is the business doing well, etc. And then there's the things that I look back on and go, what will I remember in 20 years' time or in 30 years' time that I think really matter to me? And there's probably been 2 or 3 over the last few years since I've been in the privilege of having a leadership role where I can affect some change. But one of those is sort of in the UK where we basically started up at my behest and thanks to sort of huge input from a number of people who really made it happen, our solicitor apprentice program. So historically in the UK, lawyers, you had to have a degree and you had to come sort of out of a degree into law. A few years ago, the rules liberalised so that you could hire people age 18 out of school directly. And one of the major drivers for organisations getting involved in that context is social mobility, because essentially what you're trying to do is provide a platform of really talented people who may not have the means to go to university and sort of fund that over 3 years, etc., because they've just, they either can't get the loans, don't want the loans, have family support, etc. So we embraced that and we sort of joined together we tried to sort of take a lead in a group of 50 firms coming together to do that. And so I look at that and go, we're about to have our third cohort of solicitor apprentices come in, so come straight from 18. And I think they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. But it's sort of another way into the law, giving people opportunities they otherwise wouldn't have, opening up access to this profession. And I'm really proud of that, because I think that is one way you can look at and say, without me, that sounds utterly so self-centered and selfish, but that is sort of like, that's one thing that I know I can point at and say I made a difference. So I'm proud of that. And I've said to them, I'll be long gone from Linklaters by the time it's a 6-year program, by the time they come through and they qualify as lawyers. But I said to the first batch, I'm going to promise myself that I come back to see you qualify, because I'm just utterly proud of them and of what we've done.
Oh, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Yemisi.
It really is lovely, isn't it? I want to go back to the reading. You said you were an avid reader, Paul. I'd love now if you could encourage our listeners to read one piece of research, one report, one book, something that has inspired you to be more responsible.
Yeah, it's really hard. So I do read a huge amount, and I was trying to think of this. I mean, so one that really impacted me, I do a huge amount on social mobility, passionate about it, and probably because it's the one of the various different sort of DEI strands, the one that I sort of most closely identify with. And so there was a report by a group called the Bridge Group in the UK a few years ago, which was around social mobility in the workplace, in particular in professions. And it really hit home in terms of, its description of the dynamics and how they worked. And there was a phrase in there, which I still remember, and someone was quoting this to me the other day, and that it hit home to them. And it was talking about moving from your community that you grew up in to this other world. And it said, the challenge is I now feel that I don't fit in the place where I'm working. I also no longer fit in the place where I came from. And it was just so powerful a statement, as that sort of, you're caught somewhere between two worlds at a point in time. And do you fully assimilate to the world that is not the one you grew up in? Or, but by doing that, then, have you left the world behind, where you're not living the same life as the people you grew up with and so on? So that report, to me, that one statement was so powerful. It impacted me, and clearly it's impacted others. But then the other thing I'd say on this is, and I am someone who is impacted by words, but in this area, I've been much more impacted by seeing inspirational people and seeing what they can do. And I know, Sarah, in a different context, we'll talk about seeing is believing at a different point. But one of the things of the first visit I went to was seeing other business leaders and what they could do and how they individually could make a difference as business leaders. So on the Coventry trip I went on, Zara from Salesforce, who ran it together with Steve Hughes from the Coventry Building Society, they were two people that, both from the words they said, but also seeing the actions of what they then delivered, they inspired me. And I think probably in this space, I've been more inspired by the people like that than I have by any words on a page.
Absolutely. I think we've been very inspired by both of you today, but I totally get that. Yemisi, what about you? Anything that you could share with our listeners?
Okay, so there's this book on social entrepreneurship that one of my first bosses gave to me. I'm really struggling to remember the name. I'll probably check for it and send it to you, so you can maybe include it in the description later. But it really broke down how to balance passion and profit, how to set the right structure around making impacts and all of that. It was very plain, very basic, very in-depth book. And I think that was, he probably realized, she's very passionate about impact, but at some point she will need to be paying rent and all of that. So she needs to start thinking about all of this. So that was a really good book. I recently read a report by the OECD around, I think it was called Missing Entrepreneurs. And it really just highlighted structural barriers, especially for women and youths and migrants, that can limit entrepreneurship. So even when there is a talent and ambition, what can make entrepreneurship not scale? So that really stood out for me, especially because it resonated deeply around the work that we're currently doing. So I'll also include the link to that to you as well.
Brilliant. Now, finally, the final question that I ask to all of the guests. We're talking about responsible business, so sometimes we just need to check in with ourselves. So as responsible leaders, what are you personally committed to doing more of or less of in the coming year? Yemisi.
That's a good question. So it will revolve around three things: listening, collaboration, and policy level engagements. So I'll start with policy level engagements. I've realized that the biggest thing that can move the needle for development in Nigeria, across Africa, is the quality of policy that is being implemented across levels, and the quality of politicians that we have in terms of leadership and all of that. And so we can give funding, we can train entrepreneurs, but if the economy is not stable, if people do not have access to basic infrastructure that can improve their day-to-day lives, it almost defeats the purpose of everything. Or maybe not defeat the purpose, it limits the impact of what can be done. And so I want to be more involved in policy level engagements, and that for me has involved being on boards of organizations, promoting political learning, enabling more young people to be involved in policy making and all of that. Collaboration as well, because we are better together. We're able to do more work leveraging on our strengths, our experiences, and also listening, not assuming what the problem is, but listening and engaging with people to really understand how to provide sustainable solutions.
Fantastic, Yemisi. And Paul, same question to you.
Oh, my answer is nowhere near as good as Yemisi's. I'm sort of in awe of that. That was brilliant. So for me, I have to say I live in a perpetual state of guilt that I need to do more, and my time is sort of split between so many things. And so for me, my biggest priority this year is to try and use sort of the role that I have to include more businesses in the business community Seeing is Believing program. So we're one of two sponsors together with Salesforce, and I really want to encourage more businesses via their business leaders to get involved. So for me, it's finding the time to really do that and make an impact and balance that alongside all the other things. So that is my single overriding objective for this year, to do more of.
Bless you. In a perpetual state of guilt that you should be doing something more, but you're the right person to be leading on the Seeing is Believing. Thank you so much, Yemisi. Thank you so much to Paul for joining us on this really great episode of The Lens. You have indeed been listening to The Lens with me, Sarah Travers. And if your business would like to get involved in supporting communities that have long endured hardship, then please visit www.bitc.org.uk to find out more about the Pride of Place programme. Thank you for listening, and do tune in next time.